Cop throws spider at black girl, but when her father shows up, "Hey there, folks! Before we dive into this powerful story, don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell to stay updated. Drop a comment telling us which state you're watching from. This story will make you think about justice and consequences. Let's get into it. In the quiet town of Millbrook, Alabama, the July sun beat down mercilessly on the asphalt as 8-year-old Zoe Johnson played happily in the playground near her elementary school. Her tight curls bounced in the breeze as she balanced on the swing, blissfully unaware that this afternoon would change her life forever. Across the park, Officer Derek Sanders watched the scene with a disturbing smile. Known in the department for his history of small provocations and cruel pranks, he kept something in his patrol car that he had been planning to use for days, a disturbingly realistic plastic tarantula. What Sanders didn't know was that Michael Johnson, Zoe's father and a former Navy SEAL, had decided to pick up his daughter early that day. He was just 2 blocks away when everything started. Zoe continued in her world of fantasy, humming her favorite song, completely oblivious to the uniformed man approaching stealthily behind the swing. The other children, one by one, began to back away, sensing something was wrong in the air. The clock on the Methodist church struck 3 times. The echo of the bells had barely faded when a scream cut through the park's air. What happened in the next few seconds would trigger a series of events that no one in that town would ever forget. At the corner of the park, Michael Johnson heard his daughter's scream, the same scream he had sworn never to let her utter again since losing his wife, the same tone of terror that haunted him in his darkest nights. The sun continued to punish Millbrook's asphalt, but a different shadow began to form over that July afternoon. In the quaint town hall, Mayor Patricia Adams was reviewing the latest budget proposals, unaware of the storm brewing just blocks away. Her focus on revitalizing the town's economy was about to be dramatically shifted. At the Millbrook Gazette, junior reporter Sarah Thompson was wrapping up a fluff piece about the upcoming county fair. Little did she know, she was about to stumble upon the biggest story of her career. Officer Lisa Martinez, a rookie cop with a strong sense of justice, was on patrol near the outskirts of town. She had joined the force to make a difference, but the ingrained culture of silence was testing her resolve daily. In his auto repair shop, community leader Deacon Brown was mentoring a group of at-risk youth, teaching them valuable skills and life lessons. His efforts to bridge the gap between the community and law enforcement were about to face their greatest test. At Millbrook High School, history teacher Mr. Jenkins was concluding a lesson on civil rights, emphasizing the importance of standing up against injustice. His words would soon resonate beyond the classroom walls. As these seemingly disconnected lives went about their routines, the threads of fate were drawing them together into a tapestry of confrontation, revelation, and potential redemption. The park, once a symbol of small-town tranquility, was about to become ground zero for a reckoning that would expose the deep-seated issues lurking beneath Millbrook's picturesque surface. In the seconds before Officer Sanders made his move, Millbrook teetered on the edge of a precipice. The actions of one man were about to set in motion a chain of events that would challenge the town's very identity and force its citizens to confront uncomfortable truths about justice, race, and the power of community. Officer Derek Sanders wasn't just any man in uniform. In his 15 years on the force, he had built a shadowy reputation that few dared to question. The son of a former police chief, he grew up believing that the badge was a free pass for minor cruelties. His pranks began in the police academy, always targeted at specific individuals, mainly people of color and unaccompanied children. The playground where Zoe played was in Oakwood Park, a green oasis in a middle-class neighborhood that still maintained a small-town feel. It was a place where everyone knew each other, but preferred to keep their eyes closed to certain injustices. The park's security cameras, curiously, often experienced technical problems on days when Sanders was on patrol. Michael Johnson carried more than just memories from his Navy SEAL days. In his last operation, before retiring to raise Zoe alone, he had uncovered a network of corruption that extended to some of the highest ranks in local law enforcement. The death of his wife, Angela, ostensibly a carjacking gone wrong, happened exactly 3 days after he began gathering evidence on the case. Zoe, unlike other children in the neighborhood, never showed fear of authority figures. Her mother, Angela, had been a teacher and activist, teaching her from an early age about her rights and the importance of standing firm in the face of injustice. Her tight curls, which she refused to straighten despite social pressure, were her trademark at school, where she was known for defending her classmates from bullying. The town had its own unwritten rules. Miss Evelyn, the candy seller who set up her stand at the corner of the park, was the eyes and ears of the community. She had witnessed several of Sanders' pranks over the years, but fear kept her silent. That afternoon, however, something in her gaze suggested her patience was wearing thin. Millbrook Elementary, where Zoe studied, was run by Principal Diane Carter, a black woman who had fought hard to reach that position. She kept a secret file with reports from parents and students about Sanders' actions, waiting for the right moment to act. The moment that, unbeknownst to her, was about to arrive. Officer Lisa Martinez, patrolling nearby, represented a new generation of police officers. Idealistic and committed to true justice, she struggled daily against the ingrained culture of the department. Her body camera, unlike those of her colleagues, was always on, a small act of rebellion that hadn't gone unnoticed by her superiors. Mayor Patricia Adams, in her office at the town hall, was more than just a local politician. A former civil rights lawyer, she had returned to her hometown with big dreams of reform. However, the entrenched power structures had proved more resilient than she anticipated. The budget she was reviewing included cuts to community programs in favor of increased police funding, a decision that weighed heavily on her conscience. Sarah Thompson, the young reporter at the Millbrook Gazette, had a nose for stories that went beyond the surface. Daughter of a mixed-race couple, she had experienced firsthand the subtle and sometimes not so subtle racism that permeated the town. Her seemingly innocuous article about the county fair was, in fact, a cover for a deeper investigation into racial disparities in local arrest rates. Deacon Brown's auto repair shop was more than just a business. It was a sanctuary for many of Millbrook's youth. A former convict himself, Brown had turned his life around and dedicated himself to preventing others from falling into the traps he once did. His efforts to build bridges between the community and law enforcement were viewed with suspicion by both sides. The town itself was a character in this unfolding drama. Founded in the early 1800s, Millbrook had a complex history intertwined with the broader story of race in America. The old Confederate monument in the town square stood in stark contrast to the newly erected Civil Rights Memorial just a block away, a physical representation of the town's ongoing struggle with its identity. As the events in the park began to unfold, each of these characters and elements of Millbrook's complex tapestry would be drawn into a confrontation that had been brewing for generations. The superficial peace of this Alabama town was about to be shattered, revealing the deep-seated tensions and injustices that had long simmered beneath its picturesque surface. The moment that would change everything happened in a matter of seconds. Sanders, with a quick movement, tossed the plastic spider at Zoe, aiming for her curly hair. The girl's scream echoed through the park, but it wasn't just fear. It was a sharp, real pain. What no one knew was that Sanders had modified the toy, adding small pins to its legs. "What's the matter, Princess? Can't handle a little joke?" Sanders taunted, laughing as Zoe desperately tried to remove the object from her hair. Small droplets of blood already trickling down her forehead. Michael Johnson was just 15 paces away when he heard the officer's laughter. The sound of mockery mixed with his daughter's cry awakened memories he had tried to bury. The same tone of laughter had echoed in the security camera footage from the night Angela died. footage that mysteriously disappeared from the police station. Miss Evelyn, breaking years of silence, began recording the scene with her cell phone. Her hands were shaking, but her determination was firm. Next to her, other residents started doing the same, forming a circle of digital witnesses. "Officer Sanders!" Principal Carter's voice cut through the air as she crossed the street towards the park. "Step away from the student immediately." She held a folder in her hands, the same one that contained all the reports against Sanders. The police officer turned to respond, his smile still on his face, when he noticed Michael Johnson's approach. Something in the ex-SEAL's walk, in the way his unwavering eyes didn't blink, made Sanders' smile falter for the first time. "Zoe, come to me, slowly," Michael called, his voice controlled, masking a fury that made his veins pulse. Each step he took towards his daughter was calculated, years of military training evident in his posture. Sanders, realizing the situation was slipping out of his control, instinctively reached for his weapon. "Hey, calm down. This is a police matter. Step back or—" Before he could finish the sentence, Michael had already covered the distance between them. In a fluid motion, precise, he disarmed Sanders with a technique not taught in any regular police academy. The officer's gun fell to the ground, and the metallic sound seemed to awaken even more witnesses. "Daddy, it hurts," Zoe sobbed, still struggling with the spider tangled in her hair. When Michael saw the blood, something primal took over inside him. In his years with the SEALs, he had learned to control his emotions, but at that moment, something different took hold. "You modified this," he stated. Not a question, as he held Sanders' wrist with increasing force. "How many other children?" Fear finally appeared in the officer's eyes as he recognized the name on the military ID that had fallen from Michael's pocket, the same name that appeared in several documents about the corruption investigation that had been hushed up years ago. Principal Carter was already by Zoe's side, carefully removing the spider from her hair, documenting each small wound caused by the pins. Her cell phone was transmitting everything live to a human rights group that she secretly coordinated. "Officer Sanders," she said, her voice carrying the weight of years of ignored complaints, "I believe we have a lot to discuss about your history in this neighborhood." The crowd that was forming began to murmur, years of similar stories coming to the surface. Cell phones continued recording, and in the background sirens began to sound, not just police, but also internal affairs vehicles called by an old contact of Michael's as soon as he recognized Sanders. Officer Lisa Martinez, who had arrived at the scene, found herself at a crossroads. On one side, her colleague, on the other, a clearly abusive situation. Without hesitation, she activated her body camera and approached Sanders. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to come with me," she said firmly, her hand on her own weapon, not to draw it, but to prevent Sanders from reaching for his backup. Sanders, now surrounded by evidence and witnesses, realized that his network of protection was beginning to crumble. But what he still didn't know was that this was just the beginning of his fall. As the tension in the park reached its peak, Mayor Adams received an urgent call in her office. The voice on the other end of the line was distorted, but the message was clear. "Madam Mayor, it's time to decide. Your career or your conscience." Sarah Thompson, the young reporter, was already on scene, her notepad filled with eyewitness accounts. This wasn't just a local incident anymore. It was the thread that, when pulled, could unravel years of systemic abuse. In his auto shop, Deacon Brown received a flurry of text messages from the youth he mentored. Without a second thought, he closed the shop and headed to the park, knowing that his presence could be crucial in maintaining peace. The confrontation in Oakwood Park was no longer just about a cruel prank. It had become the spark that would ignite a long-overdue reckoning in Millbrook, Alabama. As the tension in Oakwood Park reached its peak, several subplots began to unfold, intertwining with the main conflict and adding layers of complexity to the situation. At the police station, Chief Gregory Hawkins received an anonymous call. The distorted voice on the other end was clear. "Your golden boy Sanders finally crossed the line. Evidence is on its way to internal affairs. You have 1 hour to decide, your badge or your loyalty. The chief's face paled as he recognized details that only an insider could know. Simultaneously, in the newsroom of the Millbrook Gazette, Editor-in-Chief Frank Miller received a mysterious package. Inside, a series of documents detailed years of abuse of power and corruption in the local police force, with Sanders featuring as a central piece. Frank recognized the handwriting on the marginal notes. It was Angela's, Michael Johnson's late wife, and his former source. At Millbrook General Hospital, Dr. Samantha Lee examined the results of a DNA test she had secretly conducted. The test confirmed her suspicions. There was a genetic connection between a series of children born in the town over the past few years and certain members of the police force, including Sanders. The doctor hesitated between her ethical duty and the fear of the consequences of exposing such information. Back at the park, Miss Evelyn, while filming, noticed something familiar in Zoe's face. The girl had the same eyes as her granddaughter who disappeared years ago, supposedly taken by drug dealers. A chill ran down her spine as she remembered that Sanders had been the officer in charge of the investigation at the time. Principal Carter, while examining Zoe's injuries, recognized a pattern in the small cuts. It was identical to the wounds her own daughter had suffered years ago in an incident that the school had hushed up due to external pressure. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to fit together. Michael Johnson, still restraining Sanders, felt something in the officer's pocket. Discreetly, he removed a small flash drive, instantly recognizing it. It was the same device that Angela had mentioned in her last message before dying, claiming it contained crucial evidence. In the sky, a drone operated by Kevin, a tech-savvy teenager from the neighborhood, captured the entire scene from a privileged angle. What no one knew was that Kevin had modified the drone to intercept police radio communications, and over the past few months, he had collected hours of incriminating conversations. A few blocks away, in a discreet cafe, Lieutenant Emily Rodriguez of Internal Affairs met with an anonymous informant. The information she received confirmed her suspicions of a corruption network much larger than she had imagined, with ramifications reaching the state government. On the park bench, an elderly man observed everything with a knowing look. Few knew, but he was a retired judge who had been collecting evidence about corruption in the city for years, waiting for the right moment to act. This afternoon seemed to be the culmination of decades of patience. Each of these subplots added a new layer of urgency and complexity to the central situation. Time seemed to be running against everyone, with secrets about to be revealed and lives about to change forever. The pressure of the moment forced each character to make crucial decisions in a matter of seconds. Loyalties would be tested, secrets exposed, and the fate of an entire community would hang in the balance of the next few hours. As the confrontation in the park intensified, these various threads began to converge. The DNA test results, the intercepted communications, the hidden documents, and years of hushed-up incidents were all pieces of a larger puzzle that was about to be revealed. The simple act of cruelty towards a child had unwittingly pulled at a thread that was now unraveling a complex tapestry of corruption and injustice. Millbrook was standing on the precipice of a revelation that would shake its foundations and force every citizen to confront uncomfortable truths about their community. As sirens wailed in the distance and more people gathered at the park, it was clear that this was more than just a confrontation between a cop and a family. It was the moment when years of silent complicity and hidden injustices were about to burst into the open, demanding accountability and change. The chaos in Oakwood Park reached its climax when suddenly a piercing sound cut through the air. It was the siren of Sanders' patrol car, activated remotely. The deafening noise caused everyone to instinctively turn towards the vehicle. In that brief moment of distraction, Sanders saw his chance. With a sudden, desperate move, he broke free from Michael's grip and, in a shocking turn of events, grabbed Zoe, using her as a human shield. "Nobody move!" he shouted, his voice cracking with panic. "I'll shoot if anyone comes closer." Time seemed to freeze. Michael, with years of crisis training, remained still, his eyes fixed on his daughters. Zoe, displaying unexpected courage, didn't cry or scream. Instead, she looked directly at her father, a silent communication passing between them. It was at this moment that the true turning point occurred. From the other side of the park, emerging from the shadows, appeared a figure that no one expected to see: Angela Johnson, Michael's supposedly deceased wife and Zoe's mother. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Sanders, momentarily stunned by the sight, loosened his grip on Zoe. It was all the girl needed. With a maneuver that could only have been taught by an ex-SEAL, Zoe broke free, running towards her mother's outstretched arms. "Impossible," muttered Sanders, his gun now wavering between Michael and Angela. "You're dead. We saw." Angela stepped forward calmly, her eyes fixed on Sanders. "Death can be an excellent cover, Officer Sanders, especially when you're investigating a corruption network that goes far beyond this town." As she spoke, Angela pulled a small device from her pocket. With a click, the cameras in the park, which everyone believed were broken, hummed to life. Every prank, every abuse, every whispered conversation, it's all been recorded. The revelation hit like a bombshell. Principal Carter, clutching her folder of evidence, realized that her collection was just the tip of the iceberg. Miss Evelyn, still filming, felt tears running down her cheeks, years of fear transforming into relief. Chief Hawkins arrived at the scene, his face a mask of fury and fear. As he saw Angela alive, he understood that the game was over. The anonymous call he had received earlier made sense now. It was a final warning, a chance to choose the right side of history. Sanders, cornered and desperate, made one last move for his weapon. But before he could aim it, he felt a sharp sting in his neck. Looking down, he saw Zoe holding the plastic spider, now free from her hair. "This is for all the kids you hurt," she said, her voice trembling not with fear, but with justified anger. The effect was immediate. The small pins, though not lethal, contained a substance that Sanders used to enhance fear in his victims. Now he was experiencing firsthand the terror he had inflicted on so many innocents. As Sanders staggered, disoriented, Lieutenant Emily Rodriguez emerged from the crowd, handcuffs ready. "Robert Sanders, you're under arrest, and this is just the beginning." The drone operated by Kevin swooped low, capturing everything in high definition. The teenagers' intercepted police communications were now streaming live to thousands of viewers online. Reporter Sarah Thompson, who had arrived minutes earlier, was already furiously typing on her phone, knowing she had the story of a lifetime. The retired judge on the park bench slowly stood up, a satisfied smile on his wrinkled face. Decades of waiting were finally bearing fruit. Angela, embracing Zoe and Michael, looked at the gathered crowd. "This isn't the end," she declared. "It's just the beginning of a long journey to clean up our town. But today, we've taken the first step." Mayor Adams pushed through the crowd, her decision made. "I'm with you," she announced publicly. "Whatever it takes to bring true justice to Millbrook." As Sanders was led away, the impact of what had just transpired began to sink in. The afternoon that had begun with an act of cruelty was ending with a promise of justice. The dark clouds that had hung over Millbrook for so long were beginning to disperse, letting in the first rays of a new dawn. Deacon Brown, who had arrived moments ago, started organizing the community members, ensuring that the momentum of this moment wouldn't be lost. "Today," he called out, "we start rebuilding our community on a foundation of truth and justice." The park, once a symbol of hidden injustices, was transforming before everyone's eyes into a birthplace of change. As the Johnson family stood united, surrounded by a community awakening to its power, it was clear that Millbrook would never be the same again. In the days following the incident at Oakwood Park, Millbrook found itself at the epicenter of a media and judicial storm. The consequences of the event spread like ripples, affecting not only those directly involved, but the entire structure of the town and beyond. Robert Sanders was immediately suspended from the force and placed in preventive custody. The jail cells, once familiar to him for other reasons, now became his new residence. His former colleagues on the force avoided him, fearing association with his crimes. Chief Gregory Hawkins faced a moral dilemma that consumed him. After hours of deliberation, he made a surprising decision. He turned himself into internal affairs, offering crucial information about the corruption network in exchange for a possible reduced sentence. His confession opened a Pandora's box, implicating high-ranking figures in the state government. Sarah Thompson published a series of explosive reports detailing years of abuse of power and systemic corruption. Her work, based on evidence provided by Angela and corroborated by numerous sources, gained national recognition and was nominated for investigative journalism awards. Principal Diane Carter suddenly found herself at the center of attention. Her folder of evidence, combined with Angela's records, provided the basis for dozens of lawsuits against corrupt officers. She was invited to testify at a state congressional hearing on abuse of authority in educational institutions. Miss Evelyn, whose recording of the incident went viral, transformed into an unlikely local activist. Her candy stand became a meeting point for discussions on civil rights and community vigilance. She finally found the courage to share the story of her granddaughter's disappearance, leading to a reinvestigation of the case. Dr. Samantha Lee, after much ethical reflection, decided to disclose the results of the DNA tests. The revelation that Sanders and other officers were the biological fathers of several children in the town opened a new and disturbing facet of the case, leading to investigations into sexual abuse and human trafficking. Kevin, the teenager with the drone, saw his life change dramatically. His recordings became crucial evidence in various lawsuits. Technology companies and security agencies showed interest in his skills, offering him opportunities that previously seemed unattainable for a young man of his background. Lieutenant Emily Rodriguez was promoted and placed in charge of a special task force to investigate police corruption across the state. Her tireless work began to dismantle criminal networks that had been operating for decades. The retired judge who had observed everything from the park bench came out of anonymity, offering to lead a commission on ethics and civilian oversight of the police. His experience and deep knowledge of legal intricacies proved invaluable in restructuring local security forces. For Michael, Angela, and Zoe Johnson, the consequences were deeply personal. The family, reunited after years of forced separation, faced the challenge of reconnecting. Zoe, in particular, showed signs of post-traumatic stress disorder, alternating between moments of extraordinary courage and episodes of intense anxiety. The town as a whole underwent a transformation. Peaceful demonstrations occurred daily, demanding reforms in public safety and greater governmental transparency. Community vigilance and mutual support groups formed in every neighborhood. However, not all reactions were positive. Veiled threats began to circulate, targeting key witnesses and investigators. The shadow of retaliation from corrupt elements not yet captured loomed over the town, reminding everyone that the fight for justice was far from over. Mayor Patricia Adams found herself navigating treacherous political waters. Her stand against corruption won her public support, but also powerful enemies. She began implementing sweeping reforms, starting with a complete overhaul of the police department's oversight mechanisms. The Millbrook Gazette saw a surge in readership as people hungered for more information about the unfolding scandal. Editor-in-chief Frank Miller had to hire additional staff to keep up with the influx of tips and leads from newly emboldened whistleblowers. Deacon Brown's auto repair shop became an unofficial community center where people gathered to discuss the changes sweeping through Millbrook. His mentorship program expanded, now focusing on civic engagement alongside vocational training. As the consequences continued to unfold, one thing became clear. Millbrook would never be the same. The incident in the park had removed the veil of silence and complacency, exposing deep wounds that could now finally begin to heal. In the months following the incident at Oakwood Park, Millbrook became a living laboratory of social transformation and personal growth. Each character involved in the story faced unique challenges, forcing them to evolve in ways they never imagined. Zoe Johnson, the young catalyst of all the change, went through an intense process of healing and self-discovery. Therapy sessions, initially difficult, became a safe space where she could process her experiences. With the support of her parents and a child trauma specialist, Zoe gradually transformed her fear into strength. She began giving talks at schools about courage and the importance of reporting abuse, her initially trembling voice evolving into confident, inspiring speeches. Michael and Angela Johnson faced the challenge of rebuilding their family after years of separation. The process was marked by moments of intense joy and profound difficulty. Michael struggled with feelings of guilt for not protecting his daughter, while Angela dealt with the trauma of her years in hiding. Through couples therapy and open communication, they slowly relearned to trust each other and themselves. Michael channeled his military experience into training community groups in self-defense and citizen vigilance techniques, finding a new purpose in protecting his community. Principal Diane Carter transformed her school into a model of citizenship education and human rights. She implemented innovative legal and ethical awareness programs for children and adolescents, gaining national recognition. Her tireless work not only improved the lives of her students, but also inspired other schools to follow her example. Miss Evelyn, the candy seller turned activist, discovered leadership skills she didn't know she possessed. She organized a support group for families affected by police violence, transforming her personal pain into a driving force for change. Her granddaughter, whom she believed was lost forever, was located and rescued thanks to the investigations triggered by the case, providing an emotional reunion that symbolized hope for the entire community. Dr. Samantha Lee, after disclosing the DNA tests, faced threats and attempts at silencing. However, she persisted, establishing a free clinic for abuse victims and their children. Her work not only provided essential medical care, but also helped collect crucial evidence for ongoing legal proceedings. Kevin, the drone teenager, channeled his technological talent for social good. He developed a community safety app that allowed citizens to report and document incidents of police abuse in real time. His innovation not only increased accountability for law enforcement, but also earned him a scholarship to a prestigious technology university. Lieutenant Emily Rodriguez, now leading the anti-corruption task force, faced resistance within the force itself. Each victory was accompanied by new challenges, but she persisted, inspiring a new generation of officers committed to integrity and public service. Her work resulted in a complete overhaul of police training and supervision protocols in the state. The retired judge, in his role on the Ethics Commission, became a father figure to many young aspiring lawyers and activists. He initiated a mentorship program, sharing decades of wisdom and experience with those who would continue the fight for justice in future generations. Even Robert Sanders, confronted with the consequences of his actions, began a painful process of self-reflection in prison. Although his path to redemption was long and uncertain, he started cooperating with investigations, providing information that helped dismantle even deeper corruption networks. Mayor Patricia Adams, despite political pressure, stood firm in her commitment to reform. She implemented a series of transparency measures, including public hearings on all major city decisions and a citizen oversight committee for the police department. Sarah Thompson's investigative reporting not only won her accolades, but also inspired a new generation of journalists in Millbrook. She started a mentorship program at the local high school, teaching young people the importance of ethical, thorough reporting. Deacon Brown expanded his auto repair shop into a full-fledged community center, offering not just vocational training, but also classes in civic engagement, conflict resolution, and community organizing. The town as a whole underwent a metamorphosis. Urban revitalization projects led by community councils transformed previously neglected areas into spaces of coexistence and empowerment. Government transparency became a priority, with city council meetings live-streamed and open to public participation. As the first anniversary of the incident approached, Millbrook prepared for a ceremony of commemoration and reflection. Oakwood Park, once the scene of injustice, would be re-inaugurated as a monument to resilience and the fight for justice. Zoe, along with other children from the town, was invited to plant a tree of hope, symbolizing growth and renewal that emerge even in the most unlikely soils. The journey of overcoming and growth in Millbrook was far from over, but each step taken was a victory, each challenge overcome a proof that change, however difficult, is always possible when a community unites for a greater cause. As the first anniversary of the Oakwood Park incident approached, Millbrook buzzed with a mixture of anticipation and apprehension. The ceremony to rededicate the park, now renamed Justice and Renewal Square, was set for the exact day everything had begun a year ago. However, as preparations advanced, an underlying tension began to grow in the town. Michael Johnson, now working as a security consultant for the mayor's office, noticed an increase in suspicious activities over the past few days. His contacts in the underworld reported unusual movements of figures linked to the old corruption network. With his military experience, he knew something big was about to happen. Angela, for her part, immersed herself in a frenzied investigation. Her sources pointed to a possible retaliation planned by uncaptured members of the criminal organization. She spent sleepless nights connecting dots and deciphering intercepted coded messages. Zoe, now 9 years old and more mature than her age suggested, felt the growing tension in her parents. Determined not to be a victim again, she intensified her self-defense and vigilance training, teaching other neighborhood children what she learned. Principal Carter received an anonymous warning on her desk. Not all snakes have been driven from the garden. Alarmed, she immediately activated her new school security system, developed after last year's incident. Schools across town went on high alert. Miss Evelyn, with her network of street informants, began to hear whispers about a planned cleanup. Her years of experience told her something sinister was forming in the shadows. She quickly mobilized her network of community activists, preparing them for any eventuality. Dr. Lee noticed a sudden increase in the number of patients with suspicious backgrounds coming to her clinic. Fearing an attempt at infiltration or sabotage, she implemented stricter security protocols and alerted the authorities. Kevin, now recognized as a technology prodigy, detected a series of sophisticated cyber attacks against the town's systems. Working tirelessly, he strengthened Millbrook's digital defenses, knowing that the next battle could well be fought in cyberspace. Lieutenant Rodriguez received alarming reports from her intelligence teams. Several ex-corrupt cops who had escaped the initial operation were seen returning to town. She knew time was running out to prevent a possible attack. The retired judge, sensing the gravity of the situation, called an emergency meeting with community leaders and authorities. His experience told him the town was on the brink of a boiling point. Meanwhile, in the state prison, Robert Sanders received an unexpected visit. A corrupt guard handed him a message: "Be ready. The show is about to begin." The ex-cop, torn between his criminal past and his recent cooperation with authorities, faced a decision that could change everything. On the eve of the ceremony, the tension in town was palpable. Security teams reinforced every corner, surveillance drones patrolled the skies, and citizens were on high alert. The park, the center of attention, was transformed into a virtual fortress with layers of visible and invisible security. Michael and Angela, aware they were in the eye of the hurricane, made the difficult decision to send Zoe to a safe location outside of town. The girl, however, had other plans. Determined to face her fears and protect her town, she hid, planning to be present the next day. Mayor Adams received an encrypted message warning of a potential attack during the ceremony. She faced the dilemma of canceling the event and appearing weak, or proceeding and risking public safety. Sarah Thompson, following a lead, discovered evidence of a conspiracy reaching the highest levels of state government, with plans to use the Millbrook ceremony as a stage for a dramatic power play. As night fell over Millbrook, an eerie calm settled in. It was the quiet before the storm. Each character, each citizen, instinctively knew that the following day would be decisive. The stage was set for a confrontation that would determine not just the future of the town, but also test the strength and resilience of a community that had learned to fight for justice. The day of the ceremony dawned, with a sky heavy with dark clouds, as if nature itself sensed what was to come. Justice and Renewal Square, the epicenter of events that transformed Millbrook, was packed with citizens, authorities, and journalists from across the country. Michael and Angela, tense but determined, took their places on the main stage, their eyes constantly scanning the crowd. Zoe's absence was a latent concern, but they trusted she was safe, far away. Little did they know their daughter was hidden nearby, observing everything with watchful eyes. As Mayor Adams rose to begin her speech, the first act of the criminal plan sprang into action. Suddenly, all communications in the town were cut off. Cell phones, police radios, and even the square's sound system went silent. Kevin, monitoring the situation from his improvised command center, detected the cyber attack and began a frantic battle to restore systems. In this moment of confusion, several hooded men emerged from the crowd, drawing weapons. Michael, with his sharpened reflexes, was the first to react. He tackled the mayor, shielding her from a burst of gunfire that struck the stage. Angela, revealing skills acquired in her years of undercover investigation, quickly organized a defense line with the present guards. The square transformed into chaos of screams and running, with citizens seeking shelter. Lieutenant Rodriguez, who was in the wings, immediately mobilized her tactical team. They split up, some protecting civilians, others engaging the attackers. The sound of gunshots and explosions echoed through the town. Zoe, seeing the danger her parents faced, made a courageous decision. Using infiltration techniques she'd learned from her father, she snuck into the police's abandoned mobile command center. With Kevin's app's help, she managed to send an emergency alert to the entire town, mobilizing citizen vigilance groups. Miss Evelyn, receiving the alert, activated her network of informants. Suddenly, the attackers found themselves surrounded not just by police, but by a united community. Residents blocked strategic streets, cutting off escape routes. Dr. Lee, who was in the square to provide first aid, found herself in the crossfire. With extraordinary courage, she organized an improvised medical post, saving lives as bullets flew around her. Principal Carter, using her authority as a school principal, quickly transformed nearby schools into safe shelters, coordinating the evacuation of civilians from the conflict area. At the height of the battle, an unidentified helicopter appeared in the sky, apparently to extract the attack leaders. It was at this moment that Robert Sanders, who had been secretly released to participate in the operation, made his final choice. In an act of redemption, he used privileged information to help Lieutenant Rodriguez shoot down the helicopter, sacrificing his own life in the process. The retired judge, using his contacts in the judiciary, secured an emergency order to block suspicious bank accounts, cutting off the criminals' financial support at the crucial moment. As the battle reached its peak, Michael and Angela, fighting side by side, found themselves cornered by a group of attackers. It was then that Zoe, no longer hiding, emerged from her hideout. Using a mix of childlike courage and newly acquired skills, she created a crucial distraction, allowing her parents to turn the tide. Kevin, after an intense cyber battle, finally managed to restore communications. With coordination re-established, security forces quickly gained the upper hand. In a dramatic moment, the leader of the attackers, revealed to be a high-ranking state government official, attempted one last gambit. He threatened to detonate explosives planted at key points around town. It was then that Miss Evelyn, using her street contact network, provided the exact location of the devices, allowing for their deactivation at the last second. As the sun began to set, the sound of gunfire was replaced by ambulance sirens and cries of victory. The last attackers were captured or surrendered, realizing they were fighting not just the police, but an entire united town. In the center of the square, now marked by debris and signs of struggle, Zoe reunited with her parents. The embrace of the three symbolized not just the love of a family, but the resilience of an entire community. Mayor Adams, dusting off her torn jacket, stepped up to the damaged podium. "Today," she declared, her voice echoing through the hastily repaired speakers, "Millbrook didn't just defend itself. We defined ourselves. This is who we are. United, resilient, and committed to justice." As the dust settled, it became clear to everyone, Millbrook had faced its final test and emerged stronger than ever. The battle was won, but the true victory was the transformation of a once divided town into a united community, ready to face any challenge. The day that began with an attempt to destroy Millbrook ended as a powerful affirmation of its newfound strength and unity. In the weeks following the attack, Millbrook underwent a process of collective healing and reflection. Justice and Renewal Square, though scarred by recent violence, became an even more powerful symbol of resilience and unity. Michael, Angela, and Zoe Johnson emerged as reluctant heroes. Their story of separation, reunion, and joint struggle against injustice inspired not just the town, but the entire country. Zoe, in particular, became an icon for youth, showing that even children have the power to make a difference. Lieutenant Rodriguez, recognized for her leadership during the crisis, was promoted to Chief of Police with the mission of completely reforming the police department. Her first act was to implement a training program focused on human rights and community engagement. Kevin saw his community safety app adopted nationwide. He was invited to lead a cybersecurity task force working to protect cities across America against digital threats. Miss Evelyn, whose network of informants proved crucial, was honored with a position on the newly formed Community Safety Council. Her candy stand transformed into an information and support center for the community. Dr. Lee expanded her clinic, which now offered not just medical care, but also psychological support for violence victims. Her work became a model for other cities, integrating physical and mental health in the process of social healing. Principal Carter saw her school become a center of excellence in civic education. The curriculum she developed, focusing on human rights and citizen participation, was adopted in schools across the state. The retired judge, recognizing the need for systemic changes, accepted an invitation to lead a state commission on judicial reform, working to ensure that the legal system truly served justice. Mayor Adams, despite facing political challenges, stood firm in her commitment to reform. She implemented a series of transparency measures, including public hearings on all major city decisions and a citizen oversight committee for the police department. Economically, Millbrook saw an influx of investments. Companies, attracted by the town's story of transformation and its engaged community, began to establish themselves there, generating jobs and opportunities. The story of Robert Sanders, though tragic, served as a powerful reminder that redemption is possible. His final choice to sacrifice himself for the town he once harmed sparked deep debates about rehabilitation and second chances. A year after the attack, the square was once again the scene of a ceremony. This time, there was no violence, only celebration. A monument was inaugurated not just to remember the past, but to inspire the future. On it were engraved the words that became the town's new motto: "From darkness to light, united we stand." As Zoe, now 10 years old, planted a new tree in the square, surrounded by her family and the entire community, it was clear that Millbrook's true victory wasn't just defeating crime, but creating a more just, aware, and united society. The town had become a beacon of hope, showing that real change is possible when people unite for a greater cause. 5 years after the events that transformed Millbrook, the town has become a model of participatory governance and community safety. Zoe, now a socially engaged teenager, leads a group of young activists. Michael and Angela have founded an NGO focused on reintegrating ex-inmates into society. The tree planted by Zoe has grown strong, as has the community spirit. Visitors from across the country come to witness the Millbrook miracle. As the town thrives, its inhabitants know that constant vigilance and community engagement are the price of freedom and justice. The future, once uncertain, now shines with hope. Hey folks, if you've made it this far, you've lived every moment of this incredible journey with us. Now it's your turn to make a difference. Share this story. Inspire others to fight for justice in their communities. Remember, change starts with each of us. If you watched till the end, leave a comment saying, "I watched till the end and I'm ready to make a difference." And don't forget to click on the video that appears on the final screen. There's more inspiring content waiting for you. Together we can transform not just one town, but the entire world. Until the next story.